And welcome back, Beyonders, to Tabletop and Beyond. We are excited for you tonight. This is the winning Warcry portion of the Tabletop and Beyond podcast. And we have two great hosts, co-hosts with us tonight. I'm, of course, your host, Justin. But we've got Dan and newcomer to the show, first time on it, and apparently dispossessed aficionado, Matt. Matt, welcome to the show tonight.
Glad to be here. Yeah,
awesome.
Glad
Matt,
to have
you play in the same local area as Dan, right? Like you guys play together and play often, right? I assume.
Yeah, we play together a lot.
Awesome. So, please tell me that you beat him often.
I don't know about
Not the last time we played. Because I was playing my new dwarves.
Oh yeah.
And you were playing Dispossessed and you won.
Oh. Were these the Vulcanite Firesteel or Flameseeker, sorry, that you're playing?
Yeah. It all fell apart when I did the big, 3 actions in one dice, like move, attack with the stupid little baby Magmadroth. And it did 0 damage to a dwarf.
Yeah.
And then, move, attack, 0 damage. And then, Matt, I think you killed it before it could do its regular attacks, didn't you? Or
Yes, that's correct.
yeah.
I think it ran right into the Arcanaut Admiral and just got taken down.
Yeah.
That's when you hear Morgan Freeman's voice narrated. It's like, that's when Dan knew he messed up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, like I said, Matt, we are happy to have you here on the show with us. We are going to talk about the other 2 factions in Cities of Sigmar, the Darkling Covens and the Dispossessed, and I'm excited to get these done. As we mentioned before, I really, really like the reorganization of Cities of Sigmar within Warcry, and I know it's in broader AOS as well, but just the fact that we narrowed it down to 2 factions, it's not like pick and choose super buffet that it was before. I think it makes a lot of people be able to wrap their heads around Cities of Sigmar way better than it used to. It takes up way less real estate in the PDFs than it used to. It was like a quarter of the cities or the Sentinels of Order book. It seemed like. So I'm excited to kind of dive in and see the other half, because we did talk about the main one, which is the Castellite hosts last week. So yeah, excited to get to it. But first, let's talk about our hobby table. Dan, why don't you kick us off with your hobby table?
So I've been experimenting in painting purple and blue skin. I think you've got a picture of a Ogre and Myrmidon that I am halfway through. But tonight, I am going to slap chop, hopefully finish it during this podcast, but I am going to slap chop what is this? 5, 10, 15, 16 Blood Reavers. I must be missing 4 of them. 17 Blood Reavers. This one has no arms. 17 is a perfectly so this round one would number. Have been 18. Anyway, I'm going to be slap chopping 17 Blood Reavers tonight, so that is my hobby table for today. And maybe I finish them by the end of the podcast. I hope so.
Now, this purple that you have, I pulled up your Myrmidon here. This purple that you have, This is what kind of the slap chop of this, or is this just like
no? This was doing layering and then a glaze back down. So
nice.
You can't get I guess maybe you could. I don't know. Getting it to be like one color in the bottom, because I wanted it to be kind of purple in the recesses and then blue in the highlights, and so kind of hard to do that with slap chopping. You kind of have to spend a little bit more time on it, I think.
I agree. I agree with that. I think slap chop is great for things like Blood Reavers, where you have 20 of them.
For 17 Blood Reavers, yeah.
But when you got like a bigger model that really catches the eye for people like a Myrmidon, I like to take my time with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, very good, very very good. Matt, how's your hobby table? What you working on?
Right now, I'm painting up a It's a Reaper Miniatures Warg, which I'm going to use as a Frost Saber because the Frost Saber official model is terrible. It's, I think, GameStop Workshop's worst model that they currently sell.
Oh, I don't know. I think the original Yeti is like up there for like worst model. Like, you know, before these new cool Yetis came out, the old one was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
That was the same
the original
release.
Frost
That was
Saber.
Snow Ogres. That was the same release.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever designed those hopefully may not be at Games Workshop still. So
Oh. Or maybe
that's
they've
rude.
improved.
That's rude. Sorry, James. I apologize, James Workshop. I'm sorry. But yeah, Matt, they are terribly ugly, and I'm glad you found an alternative. Yeah. How many are you painting up?
Just one to go with my Ogre Warband. I don't think more than one is a good idea, but just one fast guy to go harass little things.
Mm-hmm.
And they harass for sure. Those Frost Sabers, like, they're no joke. They're actually, in my opinion, some of the best beasts in the whole game. Because they've got that extra bonus move that they can do, and they're just really fast. Really, really fast. So,
and Hrothgorn's an Icebrow Hunter. Can't he like buff them some way? I don't remember. I don't play Hrothgorn, so I don't know. But I think he can. Most Hrothgorn players don't actually do this, but I think he can buff Frost Sabers with the.
He can. I don't play Hrothgorn, but I might take a look into it. But yeah, he does have some kind of buff for them.
Yeah, that's cool. Hrothgorn and like 6 Frost Sabers. Just like go, you know. You know, here's the thing: is like, who cares about treasure missions when you've killed them all, right? Like, it doesn't even matter. That's awesome. That's awesome. How far into your Ogre's Warband are you?
I've played them a lot. I'm just looking for more options.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's funny when people have a little bit more points than 45 for like an extra, you know, like Noblar here or there. They tend to think about Frost Sabers and like Yetis, like those two things, because both of them have some great abilities. Both of them can pack a punch. You know, so they're good options. Yeah.
Matt won our narrative league with a Ogre Tyrant that had Unstoppable Rampager, which is
yikes.
You get natural +2 attacks if you've made a move action.
Oh my gosh. That is ugly.
It's really powerful.
That's like a built-in Brugit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a like native Brugit. But ogres have on the Maw Path, so they can just get with their first move +3.
Yeah.
So you're gonna attack something.
Oh, dude,
no
that thing is bad. I mean, it's like 6 movement with that, or do they have base 3 or base 4 movement?
Base 4. So
so 7 inches of move, and then attack and die. Yeah.
And the Tyrant has 2-inch reach, so
yeah,
it was just slaughtering everyone's leader.
Yeah, I bet Reaper was just like, run away, save yourselves. That's funny. That's pretty good.
I actually did.
Yeah.
I lost the battle. I actually had to keep reminding myself that I'd lost it because I was so proud that I took down the Tyrant that I kept like telling people I'd won and then remembering, oh wait, no, I actually did lose. I just threw.
It was such a moral victory, right?
I threw 2 eels and an Achillean King into the Tyrant, and I did kill it. But I lost the battle.
That's funny. That's cool. Awesome. Well, you'll have to show us some pics. I don't know if you're in our Discord for Tabletop and Beyond. And get on there. But if you are, well, there is a link in this video for anybody who is interested in joining our Discord, and I can send you the link later, Matt. If you're watching this video right now, you go ahead and click on the link down below to join us in our Discord. We love talking Warcry in there. And it's also, we have some amazing painters and hobbyists in our group. Like, I don't know if you've seen some of those pictures in there, Dan, of the models that some of the people post. Like, there's some really talented people. And I thought, like, I was decent at painting, but I feel like such a schlub when I see some of their stuff. I'm like, wow, they're really, really good. You know,
I'm generally upset that Warcry players are getting better at painting as a group. It's very It's
I know,
it's
right? You're like, I don't
like
seem to be progressing as fast as the as fast as the group is.
as the community as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a great place to post pictures of like your miniatures and your war bands and discuss lists and stuff like that. So, highly recommend it. Yeah. I am working on my Quester Soulsworn. So the funny thing is like me working on this Quester Soulsworn is like it's literally the meme of like the guy looking at the girl as he's walking with his girlfriend, you know? Like I've got like the Dominions like Stormcast that I need to finish, and they're like all half painted and they're just ready to go. But then I'm just like, oh wow, look at these Quester Soulstorm. I'll just paint them real quick. You know what I mean? Like I'm finding any reason to paint those, like finish painting those other ones. So I just need to get those done. But this is my Quester Soulsworn, and I did some freehand on their cape. I wanted to
Oh, that looks great.
yeah,
Nice.
so I wanted to do like a sunburst on them because like to me, like they're these guys that travel like space and time. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of like everywhere trying to save the universe type of thing.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and so I wanted to kind of paint this this guy. Now the story behind it, I'm gonna try to find the other picture because I tried to do it the first time. And when I did it, it did not look good at all. I was not happy with the results. And I literally just painted over it and was like, okay, like I'm starting all over completely. Here, let me show you this other one. Share screen. All right, here was my original attempt. Oops, no, let me share a better screen. Hold on.
Oh,
Here,
okay.
Here was my original attempt. Okay. Yeah. So this was my original attempt at it. Yeah, look, I painted this and I'm like, this looks like freaking carnival pants.
Yeah, they're both too saturated.
You know what I mean? I'm just like, this looks like Big Top Pee Wee, like ended up hitting my my miniature, you know, like in the worst way possible. And I was just like, man. And this is one of those moments where it's like you stop painting for a week because you can't like figure out what the problem is. Do you know what I mean? And you're just like, I don't know how to fix this, so I'm just not going to paint. And so like I just didn't do anything until I started thinking about it. And then I ended up Googling Destiny, like the video game, like the cloaks in Destiny.
Yeah.
Because they had some that had like sunbursts and different designs that I really liked and color schemes that I thought were really good too. And so I ended up seeing a couple of them, and then I went back to the drawing board and I ended up doing the new one, which again I'll pull that up real quick. And I think it worked out way better. So I went way darker with the blue. And then I put like a kind of a cream, and then like put the like a yellow, yellow in it. So it wasn't as stark, and it didn't seem as cartoony. So anyway, and I think the rays like emanate a little bit better on this cloak too. So
totally.
The thing is
fewer of them, right?
Exactly.
Each one is wider, and so they kind of sell a little bit more. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so the rest of the miniatures I'm keeping pretty simple. I painted these bronze. I did a quick like little highlights with some silver, and I've got some black leather that's on them, and then some silver buckling and stuff like that. And like just keeping them super simple. Like the highlight is their cloaks, and then it's really it takes me a little while to do the cloaks, but overall like the miniatures don't take that long, and there's only 6 of them. So I hope to have them finished here by the end of the month, since I'm going out of town at the end of this week. But yeah, by the end of this month, I want to have that as my next warband finished. So my goal for this year is to have one warband painted a month. And last month I finished my Jade Obelisk. This month I'm hoping to finish this Quester Soulsworn. Next month I want to take on the Black Talon that I have. Notice I'm choosing warbands that only have like 6 models, by the way.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But anyway, yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that kind of came out, and so I'm happy to excited to get the rest of it done.
Nice.
So yeah, very good. All right, well, let's talk about some news. Our last episode we mentioned the Lumineth Realm Lords and the well, I don't know if we actually talked about them as much, Dan, with the Lumineth, because I think we talked about how they were like the best. They like when you accidentally mistake the Broadway troupe for the actual troops. Did we talk about that?
Oh, I've heard. Okay, you did not talk about this with me, but I have heard people say that they give like AOS Harlequins energy. Is that what
they
you mean?
totally have AOS Harlequins energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we were joking in our Discord. Oh man, I need to find this real quick then. Just to show you some pictures, because some of these. Oh yeah, here we go. Share my screen here.
Apologies to all the people on radio.
I know.
We've been very visual tonight so far.
Shoot. Okay. Where? Oh yeah. Okay, so some of these Lumineth, like this guy right here, looks
Both
like
of these two are big Harlequins, right? Like this is
yeah. But I mean, it's like they've got like Broadway Jets versus Sharks energy too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? It's
that.
like
yeah.
When you're a Lumineth, you're a Lumineth. You know, like this guy's like pizzazz.
Hell yeah, that could be a pretty cool.
Look at this guy right here
for them, like Blue Man Group.
This one right here is screaming like "Zaza, Zaza," you know. So if you've ever seen the Saturday Night Live skit that they had with Norm Macdonald and the like Jets versus Sharks, where they're just like a gang and then they just start dancing, and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" Like I thought of that exactly when I started seeing some of these models. You know, like, and I started hearing Broadway music playing, you know. And so my joke was like, when you called for troops, but you got the Broadway troupe instead of the normal ones.
I like them. I have been dared. I did not accept the dare, but I might do it anyway. If the smaller elves are spammable, suspender spam, where you wear suspenders to the tournament, that you bring suspender spam in.
That's amazing.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are all about those suspenders, aren't they?
Just half of them. But yeah, half of them are just like pure suspenders. That's all they're
I don't know.
They do.
I think they all have suspenders. They're just under the armor.
Okay,
like,
but suspenders under armor makes sense. Like armor is hard to keep on. Like you've gotta hold it up, all of that.
See, like, look, these guys all have suspenders. Even though, like, you can see the suspenders under this guy's armor.
Yeah,
this one's here too.
All I'm saying is, with armor, you need suspenders.
100%. Yeah. But the rest of the guys are just like, hey, those look comfy. And what better way to keep my pants up in battle?
Yeah. We don't believe in belts. Although I think they have suspenders and belts.
Oh dear, that's a faux pas. That's a faux. Well,
they do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh no. And I bet they're wearing white after Labor Day too.
Oh, definitely. Yep. Yeah. That is white helmets in midwinter for Caucasian elves. No good.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So this was our hot take when I was watching the LVO preview, of the Lumineth Realm Lords. Did you guys like the Night Hunt models?
I do.
I like the leader.
I think it's cool. Like it's sucking energy out of this dude. You know.
Yeah, he's creepy.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I am a big Night Haunt player in AOS, and I had a whole like ton of Hex Rays, right? And they had this whole thing on their like size that they would ride into battle with that had these little balls with smoke coming off of it, and it just looked so stupid that I cut them off, like because it was just like, why are these here? Like it's like doesn't even make sense. Like it's gonna prevent you from cutting things. You know, like it just didn't make sense. And so when I saw these, I'm like, oh, great. Here come the balls and the smoke again. But I mean, at least this is kind of like a mace staff thing, you know?
Yeah. That's more like a traditional flail, which Medieval Nerd Corner, flails, there is historical backing for them. They appear in medieval, like illuminated manuscripts and stuff. We know that people used flails, but they're the one medieval weapon that like HEMA enthusiasts or like, like historical battle recreators, they just say they're completely worthless. They're like by far the worst weapon. You're more likely to hurt yourself than the enemy. Anyone who brought them into battle was just showing off. It's
could
very
you imagine
interesting.
you're like you like late for equipment handout day, and it's like, here's a spear, here's a glaive, here's a sword, you get the flail. You know, you're like, dang it. Yeah, so I like the flames that you can do with this. And, I don't know that I love the green and yellow flames on these. But it'll be interesting. We haven't seen anything really about the rules, right?
No.
True. I'm interested if they've got some, I would hope, like some of the other fire warbands, that they just have a lot of damage that comes from abilities. Like Scions of the Flame, all of their abilities do damage. And like Horns of Hashut, have that broken flamethrower. So I kind of hope that they're like a, tricksy, but can do real damage, just like they do it with their dice kind of warband. That'd be kind of cool.
They're gonna have to do something with him because Night Haunt right now sucks, and that makes my heart hurt so bad when I say it, because I have literally 3 shelves of Night Haunt models that would love to see the table, and I love them, and stuff like that, but they're just my wet noodles. I mean, there's a reason that we at Nova Open chose them to be staff bot. Like, and I told Jason, he says, what happens if we win? And I said, if we beat someone with this Night Hunt list that I made, they deserve to get beat. Like, it's that bad. It was that bad. So
and you almost won a game at the end of the tournament, right? But you were playing against Daughters of Cain, which is like
it was literally 2 wet noodles going after each other, so it's like trying to get a sword fight with pool noodles, So it's pretty good. The other bit of news, it's not really Warcry news, but it's stuff that I want to talk about, is they just announced yesterday Cities of Sigmar and Flesh Eater courts bolster their ranks with new Spearhead boxes. So these are kind of like the Vanguard boxes that you saw like in Warhammer 40K. They're not really a start collecting, but I guess they're sort of the new start collecting because they don't do those really anymore, So these are your new start collecting boxes. And so, like, for example, here's what you get in the Cities of Sigmar box. You get a free guild marshal, 5 free guild cavaliers, 10 free guild steel helms, and an iron weld great cannon. I don't know how much I love this for Warcry. Just because there's not a lot of variety. Like, sure, you get a free guild marshal on horse, but not a lot of people are going to be taking that anyway. A lot of times. And then, like, you only really need 1 horse in an army, so you don't really have need of the other 4 horses, and you don't need the cannon, right? So you do get some options with your steel helms and stuff like that, but I don't know if I love this box for Warcry but it is a starting point. I will say that it is a starting point for you. You know,
Yeah, the Cavalier Marshal struggles for, I mean, it's not terrible, but it doesn't have the fancy rune marks that all the synergies key off of.
right?
Um, and it has that thing, so the double that leader gets is you can do inspiring presence on a double, but only for other cavalry. So you
Right.
can make the whole cavalry warband here, um, if you want to. And I don't know anyone who's tried that or really wanted to try it, but it exists, you know, if you think that inspiring presence on a double is something that you're really excited about. But I'm not sure. I guess it would be
Yeah.
really good against, like, if your buddy runs all gunline stuff, like if your buddy plays Hunters of Huanchi and you're just like,
Right.
okay, well now I'm going to put my entire warband on top of you right on turn one.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of alpha strikes in Warcry, but
Hmm.
otherwise that's kind of tough. Because otherwise, I mean, steel helms are good, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Otherwise, like if you wanted to compete with Cities of Sigmar, you'd probably just buy a box of steel helms.
I agree, and I feel like you need a lot of the models that are in the command box as well, right? To really make a good kind of leadership, and so I don't know if this is a good starting point, but it brings us to the next one, which is the Flesh Eater Course one. I think this one's not terrible, because you get a Vargulf in it, and I know Vargulfs have been nerfed in the new recent thing, but they're still pretty nasty. Like they're still pretty tough. You get the Abhorrent Arch Regent. If you don't have that, that's a great one to have. And you get 10 Crypt Guard and 3 Morbeg Knights, which the Morbeg Knights, their stats are pretty tasty, in my opinion, too. I think they've got some oomph there that you can definitely, like, you could take this box and build a nice list out of this one right here, in my opinion. It may not be the most competitive or the most like points efficient, but you could with this box have a table worthy warband and do pretty well, in my opinion.
All right. You
Yeah.
heard it here
So
first.
yeah. Here's a question for you: how much do you think this box is going to be? These boxes.
I do not claim to be a Nottinghamologist. I don't know, Matt. Are you a Nottinghamologist? Do you ever like try to predict these things?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah,
So
same.
I'll throw out one of my predictions. I was gonna say $99, or like $95, $99, something like that, to keep it under 100.
That'd
And
be a great
usually they'll
price.
usually what they'll do is they'll like you add up the cost of like your baseline troops, you add up the cost of like some of these elites right here, and then they'll throw in like one of the other models that's essentially free. And that's kind of how they've done their pricing. That's how the started collecting was. Like the FEC start collecting, basically you got the Terrorgeist for free. Like if you added up all the the Crypt Horrors and Flayers and like all that stuff that you paid for, right? So I was gonna say $99, but GW just keeps raising the prices. I bet this is gonna be $120, and I think that's too much for models. But I think GW has just been raising prices, and I mean I've seen some videos lately of them, like people saying like, are they starting to outprice themselves out of the market? Which I think is a fair question to ask.
I don't think they're pricing themselves out of the market. I'm not sure what that means. So it's definitely like the kind of thing you see on the internet, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're doing that, but I do think it's probably going to be more expensive than you want it to be. I agree.
Yeah.
I would pay 120 because combat patrols have a little bit more stuff in them than this, unless you get a Space Marines one, and then they don't have anything in them. And they're all 160.
Yeah.
Before discounts, but before retailer discounts. And so, like there's no way these will be as much as a combat patrol. That'd be crazy.
Right.
But I think they're going to be more than $100, unfortunately, because like they're not going to be $60 less than a combat patrol.
Right.
So I guess I said I'm not a Nottinghamologist, but now here I am trying to guess. So I
I'd
don't know. You
suck you
sucked me
in.
in, but I think they're going to be expensive. I think 120 is the low end. I think maybe
That's
like
probably fair.
one.
Oof.
Because how much are Vanguards? Are these more or less models than a Vanguard? They're more, right?
Then a
Or
Vanguard
no, they're
box?
less models. Yeah,
They're
than the
less
Vanguard.
models.
They're less models. So, and Vanguards are 140. God, how cynical would that be if these came out at 140?
Yeah.
Oof.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what they're gonna be.
Matt, your reaction.
Yeah,
Dude, that
I
was
mean,
like that was my reaction when the new Warcry stuff came out, like the Vulcanite Flame Seekers and stuff, and they broke up the terrain so that now like if you got everything, it was like essentially like $60 more expensive than it was if it was all in one box. You
Mhm.
know, and that was my reaction was ugh, you know.
And I think they sold more that way though, so I think they're
I
gonna keep
know.
doing it, right? Because
I know.
people who just wanted the war bands, well,
Yep.
like people who would have not bought the box because it was too much stuff, bought like either the terrain or the war bands.
Yep.
And then the crazies, like
Got it
you
all,
know,
right?
we love
Yep.
them, but they ended up buying it all anyway. So I think they made more money that way than they would have otherwise.
They probably ended up producing less terrain because not everybody was like in love with the terrain and really wanted it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, there's something about saying like I'm gonna pay $60 for a warband versus $250 for it altogether. You know what I mean, or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just saved myself like $150, $160 by only getting this one warband that I was really in love with. And, you know, maybe if I'm filling the other ones later, I can pick those up, you know? So
Yeah.
there's definitely a psychological aspect to that too. You know, so anyway, cool.
Because when push comes to shove, you can just play with like random garbage around your house for terrain, you know?
Right.
Like you can.
Exactly.
Where it's a lot harder to do that with models, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably true. Cool. All right. That's kind of the news that we got. So let's get into our faction focus here. And let's start with the Darkling Covens because I want to kind of go over it, but none of us really like are super experts in this, and I don't know, like Darkling Covens kind of fall on the same sort of plane of existence as like the it's like the Canite Shadow Stalkers to me. You know what I mean? Where they're like,
They're a lot better. Well, they're certainly like the same theme, but I think they're
yeah.
a lot better than Canine Shadow Stalkers.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
We'll get into it a little bit. We'll try to be quick and we'll try to get to the dwarves because I think the dwarves are awesome.
Yeah.
But I think
So
there's definitely
yeah.
more than there is for Shadow Stalkers.
Well, the good news for the Darkling Covens is that they've got more hero options, right? Like than the Shadow Stalker. Shadow Stalkers only have the Shrouded Queen. They got more hero options here. A couple are mounted, right? And not like most of them are under 20 wounds, so they kind of again are on par with the kind of bespoke war bands that are out there, where your hero models are like between 18 to 25 model, you know, wounds or something. 18 to 22 models or wounds, sorry, per model. Are there any of these heroes that stand out to you, Dan or Matt?
Matt, do you have any? Because I can go in first.
I haven't looked at these guys much.
It's all good.
All right, so in terms of just pure numbers, I don't hate what the assassin is doing.
Yep. Yep.
5/4, 2/4. 18 wounds is not as many as you'd want for 165 points, but it's not the worst thing you've ever seen. But just a thing that can. Toughness 3 is not a thing you see a ton of in the competitive meta, but when you're just playing around with people, you see plenty of toughness 3 out there. And like a lot of destruction war bands have like little toughness 3 grots around there. 165 points to pay for something that can kill grots at 7-inch range. That's reasonable. And otherwise, I'd probably try to be a lot cheaper. Something like, the Lordling kind of sucks, but for 95 points, I guess, the
Lordling used to be a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Because he had access to Swift as the Wind, which was that bonus move, for a double or whatever. And they got rid of all of that. And again, for 95 points, you could stick him in a Stormcast list pretty easily. And he was moving dudes around for you pretty quick. But since they changed that, I think the Lordling has fallen out of favor. He's lost his lands and his serfs. And, is Lordling in title only, maybe, at this point.
Yeah, I'd probably go with something that I could keep just like in the back and alive, something like the Guard Master for 100 points, the Sorceress. There is an ability, a leader ability, that is trying to get you to like run in recklessly. Let me see. Yeah, Merciless Raiders. A fighter can only use this ability if it is the first battle round. Until the end of this fighter's activation, add 2 to the move characteristic of this fighter and 1 to the attacks characteristic. So that is on one of the 25 skull inside a cross rune marks. So let's go through
rune mark, I think, right?
So the leaders that have it are the Black Arc Rune Master and the Black Arc Reaver. I don't ever want to put this on the Reaver with only 12 points. You're going to be dead right away. And unfortunately, the Fleet Master, that's probably also true, but the Fleet Master at least has an extra point of strength and an extra 6 wounds. And I could see a situation where you might do that. I'm not very excited about it. I'm not very excited about having my like turn 1 just crazy alpha strike ability on a leader who only has 18 wounds, but that is at least like a thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like it might not be powerful, but it's a trick. It's a theme. It's something that you can play and enjoy, and it can kind of be your calling card. I'm gonna, especially, I'm kind of getting ahead of us here, but since we don't really like the leaders, we can skip it. When you have a ton of 55-point chaff, you can put a ton of it on the board, and you can be reasonably confident that your opponent will have to, run forward to the objectives or the treasure or whatever before you had to. So knowing that you can hit something 8 inches away with this is kind of cool. Unfortunately, it's just not that big. There are tons of factions that on a double have +1 move, then +1 attack for no hoop that you have to jump through. So the fact that this is only +2 move and +1 attack, and the hoop is like really rough. It's only the first battle round.
Which is crazy because nobody does anything the first battle round usually. You know what I mean? Like it's all about positioning in that first round, and a lot of times with the way that the deployment zones are set up, like even with a 5-inch move, like it's going to be hard to get over into somebody's thing to let you do it, right? So
yeah. So my idea was hopefully like you wait them out, you force them to run to the objectives, and maybe you're within 8 inches of someone then. But that's tough. And like, man, the consequences of losing initiative in round 2 if you use this ability are just so dire. That it's rough. But let's go to their troops, because there's a lot more to like with their troops.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, I was gonna say that with their leaders, there's nothing a lot that stands out to me. And in fact, I was gonna say that a lot of their leaders, the only difference between them is that like they have a couple more wounds and maybe their base damage is up by 1. Instead of it being 1-4, it's 2-4. Or it's like 2-4 seems to be a lot on them, whereas the normal troops are like 1-4 or 1-3. So but again, you've got the Lordling at 95, the Black Arc Reaver at 100, Guard Master at 100. Like you have some of these that are like low point costs that generally with a lot of war bands, I would tell you stay away from the 100 to 120 point leaders because they're usually twice as much as their normal version of them, right? They're like the sergeant of like that troop. They're twice as much and they don't give you twice the value. Because it's so like it's like cost efficiently it's not as good, but if you're looking for bodies, like their low point count models I think are probably better than if you were to get like some of the more 165 ones, just to have heroes on the table type of thing.
Yeah, it's like you just want to pay as low attacks as possible to just get to play the real fighters in the warband,
Right.
which are the really cheap guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've got two. They really only have 2 regular fighters that are over 100. It's the Drakespawn Knight and the Dark Rider, right? Both of those are mounted, and so like they've got the mounted tax or the movement tax that's on them. They're 165 points, 150 points. Their attack profiles are not great. Right. So I would not advise anybody of taking these unless you have them and you really want to play them. I wouldn't. I would not go for these because you can get 3, and we'll see this. You can get 3 like chaff fighters for the cost of this one Drakespawn Knight, and they almost all have the same attack profile as he does with like a little bit less damage. So
same page.
Exactly. So so let's get to their fighters real quick. One that kind of stood out to me for 90 points was the Executioner. And we'll talk about like their big bang here in just a minute, which are their really cheap ones. But the Executioner kind of stood out to me. 4 attacks, strength 3 isn't like lovely, but it does have 2-4 damage and a 6-inch move. Like this guy, for against other T3 models, I feel like would be pretty good. Like I think that he wouldn't be bad against skeletons or something like that.
Specifically in a warband that's already running like 11, 12 fighters, where you can be pretty confident you're not going to get countered when you attack with this guy. Because 4-3-2-4 can be tough when you just run into counter. But you flood the board with bodies, and then all of a sudden counter is not really a concern for you, and that makes them a little bit more playable. It does mean that you couldn't convince me to run more than 2 of him.
I agree with that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but
he does have the ability to add half the value of the ability to damage points allocated by critical strikes. That's not my favorite version of this ability. Like I always love it when it says hits and critical hits, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to roll 6s, and that's like just roll 6s. Sure, I'll win the game if I do that, right? But but it is a double, and it's like if you do need to maybe give him a little bit more oomph, like you can go for it, So it's not the worst, but it's not great.
With this warband, you'd probably catch me trying to spend all of my dice on my allies as often as possible. Like it'd be hard to convince me to try to spend dice on the fighters, other than like maybe the 1 in 20 times when your Black Arc Fleet Master gets to really pop off in round 1. Otherwise, I'm trying to use my dice on my allies, I think.
I'm gonna kind of gloss over the Black Guard and the Dark Shard. Like those two, I don't think like are much to write home about.
Agreed.
The Black Guard has a similar attack profile to the Executioner, but one less attack, and I think it's worth the 5 extra points just to go with the Executioner.
Yep.
To get that extra attack. So let's talk about their cheap guys. Okay, so they've got one at 65 points, one at 60 points, and 2 at 55 points. So let's start with the 65 point. Is the Black Art Corsair with Vicious Blade and Repeater Crossbow. Attack profile 3 attacks, strength 3, 1/3 damage, movement 5, toughness 3, 8 wounds. And he has access to the chart that first turn charge ability. Hooray. Like, don't. Like, if you ever think that you should, we're telling you right now, don't. Don't do it. That would be the biggest Leroy Jenkins moment of Warcry.
Just get your archer in there,
yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then for 60 points, it's the Black Art Corsair with Vicious Blades and Wicked Cutlass. 4 attacks, strength 3, 1/3 damage. Again, 5 movement, toughness 3, 8 wounds. I want to be honest with you guys. I'm taking the 60-point model every time over this. I don't really care about the archer with the 2 attacks, strength 3, 1/2 damage. Like, that's not going to be that would never be a choice for me. I would always take the Cutlass over the archer.
Yeah, with only 8-inch range, you wouldn't be able to convince me that because the idea would be like, oh, you run 10 of them and every single one of them is shooting the same guy, but only 8-inch range, so you can't actually do that. So yeah, I agree. No. I'm not running the archer here.
Yeah. He also, the Black Art Corsair with the Wicked Cutlass also has the Leroy Jenkins thing, but again, don't.
Because you can, if you're going to be shooting with them, you can get the exact same, a better shot profile from Caradron Overlords Arcanauts for 15 points cheaper. So, and you're not moving anyway if you're shooting with them. So just, take the 50-point guys. And Arcanauts at 50 points, their shooting actually does add up.
Right.
But these guys, and also Arcanauts deal 3 on a crit and not 2, which really hurts. So these guys not there, but I feel like we're burying the lead here.
Which, well, no, we weren't burying the lead. We're saving the best for last.
Oh, there we go.
So there's 2 fighters that are at 55 points. I think anytime you see 55 points, like, your eyes should be like that. Ooga, right? Like, you need to be looking at them. Crypt Ghouls, Arcanauts, like, every time, a faction has a 55-point fighter, it's going to be a good choice because of how many you can field there. So the Dread Spear has a 2-inch range, 2 attacks, strength 3, 1/4 damage, 5-inch move, toughness 4, 8 wounds. And the Bleak Sword is 1-inch range, 3 attacks, strength 3, 1/3 damage, 5 movement, toughness 4, 8 wounds. Which would you field a mixture of these, or would you lean in heavy to one or the other?
I could see a mixture. I think, man, I mean, 2, 3, 1, 4 is tough, but you're just running them to be, 55 points. So maybe that's fine. Yeah, I think you could convince me to run a mix of them. And you could even convince me to run a few of the Corsairs too. 60 is a lot more than 55 when you are spamming, when you're running 7 of them. But it's not a lot more than 55 when it's like, these are how many points I have, and rather than spend 10 points on a Divine Blessing for something that's not going to matter, why don't I spend 10 points turning 2 of my Bleak Swords and just getting the extra attack on them? I mean, you do lose 1 point of toughness, so that's tough against some matchups. I don't know. I think I would lean Bleak Swords because I do like my chaff to be able to do some damage.
Right. And it with that profile 1/4, 1/3, what you're really trying to do is fish for crits, right? So
yeah, and you're not rolling enough dice to do that.
Yeah.
Like 1/4 on the dread spears. I mean, because you were like really
Right.
going for crits there. You're not
Yeah.
you're not rolling enough dice. But at least with the bleak swords, you attack twice, you roll 6 dice, you'll probably get a crit.
Yeah. Right. Mathematically, should be getting a crit, right? In theory, 1 out of 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing is they do have this bulwark rune mark, and it allows them to form shield wall until the end of the battle round. Add 2 to the toughness characteristic of friendly fighters with both the Cities of Sigmar Darkling Covens faction rune mark and the bulwark rune mark while they are within 3 inches of this fighter. So if you're stacking them up, which is easy to do with them, right? Like you're going to have a ton together. Like all of them all of a sudden go from toughness 3 to toughness 5.
Yeah.
Which is not
or toughness
bad.
4. They're toughness 4.
Oh yeah, so there'd be toughness 6. And that's on a double. So
that's very reasonable.
I think it's very reasonable, and it's one that I would use fairly often, especially when you've got clumps of guys. Because, I mean, let's be real, you're going to have 3 to 4 of these probably in each deployment zone, And so if you've got a clump of guys, like saying, okay, well, that guy's going to use a double to do the shield wall because you guys are coming in next round, or next turn, I think that's super reasonable. It gives everybody that aura, basically, of it, and that I like it. I like it. So, and then you could, if you needed to, you could use reactions and things like that to kind of chip away better than maybe their own attacks would do.
Totally. Get up to toughness 6 and then start hitting people with counter. You can also their faction reaction I don't like. It's if they disengage, you get a better than the regular anti-disengage reaction, which is fine, but it does make me want to run the 1-inch range ones a little bit more, since you can actually tie people up and then get that better reaction when they decide it's not worth their time to try to kill you. Which might be especially true when it's a toughness 6 55-point fighter,
Yeah.
Something like an Ogroid Myrmidon, which only rolling 3 dice on strength 5, and a lot of people take those, and all of a sudden, it only takes 2 hits, but 3 dice, you might not roll 2 5-ups. So
right. Yeah. And tying up a Myrmidon like that is almost it's almost as good as killing a Myrmidon. Because it's not doing anything for you. You know what I mean? So I will say this. I'm gonna revamp what I said earlier about a leader. And I think I would take the sorceress. Okay. So the sorceress is 125. It has the typical wizard profile with the 3/6 damage. Yes, you're only rolling 2 dice. We talked about this before with our sorceresses, right, Dan? And and stuff like
if they're
that.
cheap enough, it's okay. But you want the 3rd dice, yeah.
So so I would take the sorceress. I do like her quad. It's in situations, right? So her quad is pick a visible enemy fighter within 3 inches of this fighter and roll a number of dice equal to the value of this ability. For each roll of 2 up, allocate 3 damage points to that fighter. In addition to the end of the battle round, half the toughness characteristic of that fighter rounding up. So that's pretty good. That's pretty. Yeah. I think it's pretty good. That's enough to outright kill some Stormcast models, depending on how many dice you're doing. And then even if you don't kill it, its toughness is going to be at a 3, or something like that. So I think that's great. Totally. All of a sudden, your guys are rolling on 4s instead of 5s. So anyway,
you
not
can
bad.
Get me to do that.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have to take a hero, I wouldn't mind taking 125 point that has access to a decent ability and maybe a little bit more damage that you could hide behind a wall of guys and do her thing,
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for Darkling Covens. If you play it, we'd love to hear how you fare with it. This seems to be, if you were to put this in a tier list, Dan, where would you put this faction? C
Yeah, I
tier?
think they're fine. I think they're B. I mean,
B.
I
Wow.
think the problem people have with them is that the abilities are not inspiring, but the profiles are perfectly good, And I think if you have a couple allies that you just think are like the sweetest models that you just wish you had a faction to run them in, you can run them in this one because they don't take any, you can have 10 fighters and you still have a bajillion points on the board to bring things into,
This is
like
a good list to run a Charybdis in.
Sure. Yeah. I think we're about to get to a faction that's better for running a Charybdis in, but
fair enough.
But yeah, I do think you could absolutely run a Charybdis in this. I mean, a sorceress plus 8 of, or yeah, let's say a sorceress plus 7 of these guys, so that gets you to 8 models. Let me get my calculator. What was the sorceress? 125, is that right?
125. Yeah.
Yeah. So 7 times 55. Oh yeah, that's nothing. Oh my God. So a sorceress plus 7 of these guys is 510 points. So you have 490 points that you can spend on 2 allies. You can get the 2 chunkiest things in order, right? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you can and that still gets you to 10 fighters. That's wild. So yeah, they're good. I mean, they're just not like I don't think they'll ever be a popular pick with competitive players because I think most competitive players in Warcry like to be a little bit cool, a little bit like fun. You play Warcry to enjoy yourself, right? And so I think a lot of people will look at these abilities and be like, not for me. But that's okay.
Right on. Like we said, if you guys play it, jump in our Discord, let us know what you think, or leave a comment below. Very interested in your experience. I never got this line. I think it's kind of hard to find a lot of these models too now. They're out there, but I don't know that GW keeps them regularly stocked, so it's a little bit harder nowadays to find them.
I think third party is your friend.
Yeah,
for these.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of cool sort of elven warrior like D&D sculpts and stuff that maybe you would use if you wanted to play these.
Yeah, very good. All right, we're gonna get to the whole point that we brought Matt on here. Like this is like the pinnacle of the reason why Matt is with us today is because we're going to talk about the Dispossessed, and excited about this because who doesn't like playing stocky, chunky boys, right, Matt?
Oh yeah, these guys are definitely stocky and they're great.
Tell me why you like the Dispossessed. Like, what's the overall kind of thematic feel of Dispossessed, and like, what are in a couple of like words, like, well, what do they bring to the table?
So first, I just want to say the thing that got me into running the dwarves was the gyro bomber. Because it's my favorite model in Warcry because it's just this dwarf helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that in a box at the game store. I was like, I have to buy these guys. But what's good about this faction right now? So is you just have these stubborn little guys who are really hard to kill and just stand on objectives, and they're like, just try it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I dare you to come get me, huh?
Yeah, and if the enemy is able to kill them, then you just kill them right back because you have this amazing reaction. The reaction is so powerful.
Let's talk about it. So, grudge bearers. A fighter can make this reaction when they are targeted by a melee action after the damage is totaled, but before it is allocated to the fighter, which is a rare thing to see, right? So, like, they're going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it is enough for this fighter to be taken down, pick another friendly fighter. That fighter makes a bonus move action or bonus attack action. So that's great.
So
Yeah.
notice what it doesn't say here,
Mm-hmm.
which is that the other friendly fighter has to be a dispossessed model.
Whoa, that is a really good point. Because the what is it? This was the same thing as the Questor Soulsworn, right? Where it's like was one is taken down, but it has to be another Questor Soulsworn or another Stormcast. I can't remember. I think it was faction locked.
I think the QS one's not faction locked, but what makes this amazing is that there are 75-point fighters that have this reaction.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to 170-point fighters.
Right. And
And
that
it's
was your
still
biggest beef with
amazing
that
on
one.
Questor Soulsworn.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think
that's
given
awesome.
who has access to this reaction, I think this is the best reaction in the game.
I think you're right about that.
Just because of like
incredible.
who has it, like who it belongs to.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible.
I assume, Matt, that you make good use of this quite often?
Yeah, I mean, this completely warps the way that you play the faction, because you're always aware that if they take down one of your guys, another guy's gonna be hitting them or moving in to hit them later.
And it's not range bound either. It could be anywhere on the board, right? Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And the other thing too is that if your guy is going to die, what's great about this is you get to use that reaction, and it's like, who cares? He's dead anyway. It doesn't matter if I have already used up his. I mean, I guess if he's already used up his movement and attack earlier in the game, then he can't use it, right? Because he's doesn't have any left. But a lot of times
changes how you play. Matt was not joking. It really does change the flow and the tempo of Warcry to play with or against this faction. I have not played this faction, but I've played against it quite a few times at this point, and it really does change the flow of the game. I really love it. The fact that Warcry is able to do this just as a game. I don't even mean like winning and losing wise. I just mean like it makes Warcry stronger that completely different play styles like this exist.
Yeah.
Because games feel completely different when one person is playing this faction, which is cool. That's how the game should be, you know.
So one thing that I was thinking about is that if I'm playing against you, Matt, I want to make sure. So normally I would try to target fighters that haven't gone yet, because if I take them down, then I take away 2 activations and I'm starting to win, or I take away 1 activation with 2 actions, right? And I start to win the activation war. Not so with these guys, right? Like, you almost don't want to like attack a dwarf that hasn't gone yet, because if I kill it, something else is going to get hit or is going to be put in place to get hit, right? So do you find that people have to shift their prioritization of your models when they're playing against you?
Yeah, definitely.
But the cool thing, having played against you, Matt, is that you have ways to punish people for overcorrecting.
Okay.
Which maybe it's too early to get into allies when we haven't even talked about the fighters.
Yeah.
But maybe we can just talk about the general shape of a list. Because Matt generally runs at least one giant ally, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you get to like activate your giant ally early in the round, which puts a lot of pressure on your opponent because it probably killed something when it activated, or it probably did something very impactful. And now your opponent is kind of having to catch up, and they can't, like, in the flow of a game, if you're desperate to score points, like, you get into this spot where you cannot catch up on points without killing a dwarf, but you can't kill a dwarf without activating the big thing.
Yeah.
And so now you're in a really tough spot.
So why don't you walk us through your list right now? We'll talk about each of those fighters that you have in your list and like why you chose them. I think that's probably a good way to go through this faction.
Yeah. So I plan on shifting up the numbers a little bit, but generally I'm always taking a Warden King, because I think the Warden King is just great stats for the points, a great leader option.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, 4 attack, strength 4, 2/5 damage. That 2/5 is a great profile, right? I mean, all your dwarves are going to be movement 3. That's just how it is,
Yeah.
right?
You just
But
live with
toughness
that.
5 and 22 wounds, like he's pretty chunky. You know, he's hard to chew through.
He has this quad that you don't really use, that just gives everyone around him a bonus move action, but it's a quad, so it's not great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And that T522, if you
Yeah.
covered up that movement stat and the points stat, you have a bespoke leader, right?
Yes.
But like
Yes.
some of the better ones. And those bespoke leaders all cost like 180 to 200 points.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yep.
And
100%.
so you're like, you're -1 move, yes, but you're getting like a 40-point discount for that -1 move.
Yes.
Which is
And
awesome.
that 22 is important because if you ever used blessings, you could put blessings on him for cheap, right? Instead of having to pay the elite number that you find
Yeah,
with
if you even had one more wound, you'd have to pay more. Yep.
Yep. And I think when we were talking about blessings last time, we kind of came to the conclusion that was like the defining factor of why they chose 22 is because that was like the bespoke hero
Was
hit
the
profile.
biggest bespoke heroes were 22.
Yeah. And
sure.
I think, I mean, obviously Warden King kind of falls in that, which I think is cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
very
having
good.
that 21st wound, like we've talked about this on a couple pods too, like the 21st wound is the most important wound in Warcry, just because of how many fighters like do things that add up to 20, you know?
Yeah.
And so having
Like
those
a Gut
extra,
Lord could crit you twice, right? And it's 20.
yeah, or
something.
just like crit hit from a Gut Lord,
Yeah.
boom, 20 damage. This guy survives on 2, so he's doing fine, you know. Not fine, but you know, he's still alive for 145
I'm
points,
fine.
right?
This is fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so you have a Warden King. What else do you have in there?
And then I'm looking at either taking, and this, just looking at some of the lists I've played recently. It really depends on whether I'm trying to fit in the Charybdis or different allies. But the Longbeards with Ancestral Great Axe, you could take a hammer instead. They're very similar.
Okay.
And then I think the Ironbreaker is really good. If you want to spend the extra 5 points, you can get the Longbeard instead to have a little bit more damage and a possibly more relevant ability. But just being able to go like, so the list I play a lot is the Warden King, 7 Ironbreakers.
Wow. Okay.
And then,
so let's talk about the Ironbreakers real quick.
Yeah.
So the Ironbreakers are 75 points, 3 attacks, 3 damage, 3 attacks, strength 3, 1/3 damage, toughness 5, 12 wounds. And they have the Bulwark one, which I imagine is like a shield wall type of thing, right?
no, it lets
Stand
you
together.
call another Ironbreaker over.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how to use this well.
Yeah, so it
I
says
don't know if this
you
is
can
supposed
pick
to do.
another visible friendly fighter with the Dispossessed faction rune mark and Bulwark rune mark within 6 inches of this fighter. That fighter can make 2 bonus move actions. After those move actions, that fighter must be within 1 inch of this fighter and cannot make any more move actions until the end of this battle round. Now, to me, the way that you would use this is if like you really need to stop or slow down a big model, like a rat ogre, for example, comes in on you, right? And there's a chance that you may die, either that round or the next round, and you pull in another guy there with you, and you're chipping away at him, but that rat ogre is going to have a hard time, is going to have to spend something to disengage and get out of there, or it's going to have to chew through 2 dwarves with toughness 5 and 12 wounds each, right? The great thing about pulling it over with 2 bonus moves, it says they can't move anymore, but that's okay. I'm going to attack twice anyway if there's a guy right there with me, So
You need to be attacking twice, or you do it on a fighter who's already gone. I think you
Yeah.
can do it on a fighter who's
I
already
think you
gone.
can, yeah.
yes, yep.
Yeah. But then it's like a lot of the time, if you've already gone, you're in the spot you want to be at anyway.
Right.
But like I agree with you, Matt. It seems like situational, but really good in the blue moons it comes up in. It seems really good.
And
Right.
like, but making 2 attacks with an Ironbreaker is like not that great because it's
Sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
but like I said, like you might put this on a Myrmidon, right? Where you just need to slow it down for a turn. Because it's
Mhm.
going to probably have to use all of its attacks to try to get through one Ironbreaker, you know. And so because they're toughness 5, he's hitting on 4s now instead of 3s, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something to think about. Now, the Ironbreakers, they're 75 points, but if you spend the 80, you talked about the Longbeard with Ancestral Weapon and Gomeril Shield. It has pretty much the same attack profile. It just has 1 extra damage on the base and the crit.
Yep.
So is that worth? Do you think that's worth the extra 5 points?
I mean, it depends how the numbers fit in for you, depending on what
Uh-huh.
other things you're running. I think it could be. You also get a different ability. You get to buff strength for fighters around you instead.
Okay. Yeah, and that's within 6 inches of this fighter, which is essentially a 13-inch bubble, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that like if he's in the middle of the board, that could be significant, you know. So,
And then I
that's not bad. I like what it's called.
sometimes
Sorry.
run the Great Axe.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say real quick. I love this name of that ability for the Longbeard. It's back in my day, you know, like he's basically telling stories to the youngins, you know. So that's good.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah, I think
who are you
Longbeards
talking
are
about?
good. I like them.
With the Ancestral Axe too.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about the Longbeard with the Ancestral Great Axe is that this guy has 4 toughness, which means you're more likely to get grudge bearers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because
All right.
sometimes people just can't kill the 5 toughness dwarves.
That is too funny. That's too funny. You're playing. You're like, all right, we really need you guys to make that sacrifice today.
Yeah.
That's good. And look, that strength 4 instead of strength 3, that makes a difference.
It does.
It really does.
Definitely matters.
You know, all of a sudden, this guy is hitting a lot more and doing a lot more damage. And he's only 5. I mean, he's 10 more points in the Ironbreaker and 5 more points in the Longbeard, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
And then there's the hammer is the same, is a very similar profile to the Longbeard. You get 1 more crit damage, and you get an ability that I guess you use it. I don't know.
All right, so it's called Kingsguard. Add 1 to the move characteristics of this fighter until the end of their activation. Okay, that's not terrible. In addition, if any friendly fighters in both the Cities of Sigmar Dispossessed faction remark and the hero remark are within 1 inch of any enemy fighters, add 1 to the attacks characteristics of melee attack actions made by this fighter until the end of their activation. So this is similar to that kind of add 1 move, add 1 attack, right? You don't get it on the hammerers, obviously, because they're not heroes. But look, I mean, here's the thing. This is Rush, but better for heroes. Right?
No, it's if there is a hero within 1 inch.
If there is a hero that's there. Sorry.
Yeah, so it jumps through a hoop. So it's like
I read that wrong.
Strictly worse than the Untamed Beasts ability. That a few factions have, where it's +1, then plus the other one, which is good. I think that ability is great when you don't have to jump through a hoop for it. But when you do, it's a little bit tougher. But I think those are okay. I think personally, I'd go with the Shield Longbeards. Get them for 80 points. But I think that the hammer, the 85 point with the extra crit, I think those ones are okay too. I think those are.
And
Both
then
are fine.
one thing that just kind of overshadows all of the other doubles in the faction is Over My Dead Body.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's look at that. Over My
Yeah,
Dead
I was
Body.
gonna
It is
save
for the
this.
whole. Yeah. Okay. So
Mhm.
this is for the whole faction, right? Until the end of the
Yep.
battle round, this fighter counts as two. Oh my gosh! This fighter counts as 2 additional fighters when determining which player controls an objective. Oh my gosh! That's
I have
amazing.
won games. So I have never played Dispossessed, but I have played a Dispossessed fighter a lot because um, every elite faction in Order should think about having a random Dispossessed hero, whether it's a Warden King who can actually fight for you, or whether it's one of the cheap ones like a Rune Lord or an Old Guard. I picked the Old Guard, but I think I could see lots of reasons to do the Rune Lord. And you just do Over My Dead Body and then wait. And then they have to kill it, right? They have to kill it or else they lose the game. And then when they kill it, you get your grudge bearers, and then your other elite fighters get to do a thing. So like as an ally, I think those Dispossessed heroes are amazing. I think they're just so incredible because of Over My Dead Body.
Yeah.
So I have won a couple games in events now. Just one with Sylvaneth and one with, man, who was it? Vulcan Flame Seekers.
Nice.
Where I just won specifically because I had an Old Guard in there. Yeah.
So one thing that I'm looking here is you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 abilities that are doubles, right? And I think when factions have doubles for abilities, like they're on the right track of winning. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's so easy to get doubles.
2 is so
And
much
you
less
just
than 3.
yeah, right. And you
Yeah.
can it's exponentially less. It's not linear, right? Like
Yeah, it's half as much in the game.
right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's great that you have this. And if you tailor your list so that you have like 2 or 3 that you focus on, in terms of your doubles. I did this with Bone Splitters where I've really only used 2 different abilities, and that just made me play so much more efficiently. Like I knew my plan going into it, and with doubles,
Yeah.
like I'm using it all the time, and like using the Back in My Day, that seems really good. Over My Dead Body seems really good. The King's Guard stand together, maybe not as much. You know what I mean? Like, but you don't have to play those fighters, and that's fine. Like, you just don't need to even think about those abilities then. And it helps simplify what your game plan is coming out. Compare that to like something like the the Soul Blight Grave Lords that have some amazing abilities, but they're like a mix of doubles and triples, and it's like you're kind of like, what do I do with all of these? And you really have to think through hard how you're gonna use those. So I think it's great.
So we've got through the leaders and
Yeah.
the troops, but I feel like the main thing is what you're spending grudge bearers on, like really changes the texture of your
Yeah.
warband. So Matt, could you talk a little bit about the allies that you generally sort of default towards with these guys?
So I've used the Charybdis
Okay.
because it's just so powerful to just get an extra attack with the monster.
Yeah.
And the monster's fast, so if it's not near something, Grudge Bearers can also give you a move so you can be near something.
Right. Now, it doesn't count as an activation, so you can't use Dragon Maul, but you still get to do a bonus move or a bonus attack, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
But then if I'm not trying to go with that power, that really top heavy, what I generally use as my allies are an Annihilator Prime.
Okay.
With the Meteoric Hammer, but the Grand Hammer is also good. And an Arcanaut Admiral.
Okay. Tell me why the Arcanaut Admiral. I think so. So let me just say, I think we understand the Annihilator Prime, and the great thing about that is that you do have the option of sending it on a bonus move action, which is probably its greatest weakness is its movement, and getting it into a position where it can then do something its next turn, I think is super amazing. But why the Arcanaut Admiral?
It's a cheaper option that still has 3 normal damage.
Okay.
And occasionally I use Fight for Profit.
Yeah.
And just bonus flavor, it's also a dwarf.
Right. There's the rule of cool in there too, right?
I find that when you're using hammerers instead of iron breakers, the Fight for Profit can actually matter. And then having an ally who uses triples is a little bit, because we just talked about these guys don't use triples. They're all doubles.
Yeah, you're not competing for resources, right?
No, the triples are just not good.
Yeah, so like having an ally that uses triples, there's no one else hungry when you roll like a natural triple or something like that. So sometimes Fight for Profit can be pretty good, even though it's nowhere near as good as it is in KO for these guys. That Admiral really fights, and then having an extra triple is good.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really good. I have a challenge for you though, Matt. Like you're gonna need to do a new warband with this. Your Annihilator Prime is gonna need to be Snow White, and you're gonna need to have some dwarves. So you're like a really tall model and a bunch of dwarves around it.
I have an option for that. The Knight Arcanum.
Oh, nice, perfect. Yes, I love it.
She's Snow White. Yeah, she is Snow White, not the art. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I think you want to have more than 7 dwarves, though.
Yeah, you're probably right. But, it's still play on it, right? When you go to put it up for best painting competition, you just kind of hide like 3 or 4 of the dwarves, and you just have your display of like Snow White and the 7 dwarves,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's actually pretty amazing. Yeah, this sounds pretty good. What does your win rate look like with this faction? I know. I mean, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Like, do you win more than you lose? Would you say?
I think I definitely win more than I lose with these.
Okay.
100% with the Stormcast version, you definitely win more than you lose.
I tried
the Stormcast version. I think is a little stronger.
I tried kind of a goofy list during a narrative thing with the Charybdis, where I was like, I'm going to put a blessing on the Charybdis, and I don't think this is a good idea, but this is something you can do with Grudge Bearers, is put the blessing of spite on a fighter that you think you want to activate in a turn where it's going to die.
Okay.
Because the spite blessing is you get to make a free reaction each round.
Oh, wow.
So even if you've already activated the fighter, you can still use Grudge Bearers.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very.
But it's also 40 points, and you probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
Especially because I find that when you are like trying hard, because one of the things to get the most value out of Dispossessed, you have to be running those counters a lot because they're toughness 5, right? Like counter is built into the value of toughness 5, but you have to know, am I gonna die on this attack? All right, no counter. Am I fine on this attack? Counter. And it feels like that's like a real big kind of arbiter of success, like whether you correctly figure that out and whether you're willing to do that math in game or not is going to be sort of something that I think people who haven't played this faction should probably know about. Is that it's going to be part of playing it.
There's a lot of hang on, let me think about whether this attack is going to kill me or not.
Yeah. And so I think spite is like you pay to not have to do the math. right?
Mm.
So you're still going to be better off putting in the effort and doing the math, because then you're just going to get those 40 points, through your own efforts. But yeah, if you don't want to do the math, if you want to like go to a narrative tournament and like drink a little or have a THC seltzer before you play, like then I think the spite is worth it.
Let me ask you this, Matt, just to kind of close this out. What is the best way to get a good band of dispossessed fighters?
Like to buy them?
Yeah.
To start collecting Greywater Fastness was great. I don't know if you can still get that though.
I know. Yeah, that's a good point. I know that there was that one box that they came out, which was that kind of mercenary company. Do you remember that, Dan?
I do. That was a little while ago, but I do remember that. One other thing I will say is this is sort of petering out, but when Cities of Sigmar came out, a ton of dwarves hit the secondhand shelves at our local store. Like if you were looking at those shelves, you could see like I think multiple people sold their collections of dwarves to our local game store when New Cities of Sigmar came out. And maybe it was just AOS players who were so mad that the new book, apparently Dispossessed are really bad in AOS right now.
Oh,
and
they get the bone splitters treatment.
Yeah, and COS humans are really good in AOS right now. But we know they're not going to old world, right? I mean, do we know that? Do we know they're not being old worlded? It seems like
I have no idea.
It seems like it would be such an unforced error to give up on Tolkien dwarfs as an archetype, especially if it's like Cities of Sigmar are very much like we took a historicals faction and just made it like just a little bit AOSy, but still, if you play historical war games, you'll look at Cities of Sigmar and recognize them. Like they're here to be not too crazy. And it just seems like having the dwarven version of that, like it would be so stupid to give that up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd be really surprised if they got taken out of the game. I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually saw like a refresh of them, or like if they got a Warcry warband that was all of a sudden like a new AOS unit for them or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think when they retired a bunch of Cities of Sigmar models a while back, they hit some elves, they hit a lot of humans, and they didn't hit any of the dwarves.
Right.
Yeah, that seems indicative. That seems like really, yeah, I don't know. Like this is the second time I've engaged in Nottinghamology when I shouldn't have.
You're
But
welcome.
it feels like that feels significant to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, if you're looking to get dwarves, it's not hard to find fantasy miniatures of dwarves from every company that makes fantasy miniatures.
That's true.
So
that's true. Yeah, there's a lot of like if you go to like My Mini Factory and stuff like that, there's a lot of like really good proxy dwarves that you could use that represent hammerers or cogsmiths, etc. So like if you got a printer, I mean that prerequisite is that you got a printer, right? So
yeah.
But yeah.
And that's another reason I think it'd be crazy for GW to give that up, because like D&D is so popular that if you have the best looking Tolkien dwarves on the market, which like those sculpts are so old now that I think that they're comparable to the other sellers out there. They're not really like better or worse. They're kind of, they're just as good. But if you have the best ones, like it's got to be such a moneymaker if you put out just like a real, like much how that command core box for Cities of Sigmar is like, that is a D&D party. Like that's just clearly that's all that's meant to be, is like, here is every fighter you'll use in D&D. Like you have 4 D&D characters. Well, guess what? 3 of them are in this box.
Right.
And it just feels like doing that for dwarves is such a no-brainer that I would be shocked if they didn't do it eventually.
Yeah. Yep. I was just looking at the online, and they have dwarves, but everything is temporarily out of stock.
Yeah.
So a little tough there.
But yeah, a
All right.
box with like a dwarven cleric and a dwarven like warrior, like one kind of grungy dwarven warrior and then one very paladin-y dwarven warrior. Like it just seems like that box would sell like crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Awesome. Well, let's see, we're about an hour 30. Let's hit our events and call it a night. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right. So we heard through the grapevine and throughout the community that there were a lot of events that happened this last weekend. It was the most events of Warcry in one weekend ever. I think what was there? There was 5
events, 86 players, I think.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a record. Breaking, I think it breaks last year's Adepticon where it was 28 in one tournament and like high 30s in another. Yeah. So and shatters that record,
Right.
So that's really incredible.
It's good. It's great. And I don't know about you, but I have heard about more people like becoming interested in Warcry and playing kind of the more skirmishy game of Age of Sigmar from just kind of in my circles. So I think that's great. I think it shows that the game's kind of growing. I think it definitely shows that there is an appetite for events out there for people to get together, and even if it's 8 people or 6 people or whatever, that appetite for events is a real thing. And just being able to play round robin or play a little tournament or something like that is great. So we wanted to hit some of the highlights for you guys today. Let's start in Nottingham at Warhammer World. That was a big tournament that happened, and they were represented by a lot of different factions. What I would like to point out, Dan, is that the winner of the Nottingham tournament was a oh my gosh, why am I blanking on their faction here? Name
Darko Savagers.
Darko Savagers with a Dan, it's late. I'm losing my mind here.
How about this? The topic that was going to be this podcast, we knew that we might not make it to our final topic because we were doing 2 factions. But the topic that we were going to do if we got through those factions fast was, is there a meta? And by meta, we don't mean like necessarily the winner's circle, but like what you expect to face. And one of the things that is becoming really popular here locally and seems like it's getting more and more popular in the UK is bespoke warband with a FOMO Crusher.
Thank you.
And Darko Savagers with a FOMO Crusher won Warhammer World, and also Unmade with a True Blood, which Matt, as you know, JJ loves his True Blood locally. And they also had a big ally. I can't remember if it was FOMO, Myrmidon, or Varangard, but it's just like that is like the holy trinity of big chaos allies that people run and do well with. And kind of, it almost feels like chaos doesn't function if you're not running those 3. Like it just feels like you have to. But either way, I know at least 2 of the top 5 were just like bespoke warband plus a giant part of the chaos unholy trinity.
Now it's interesting because I have played against FOMO Crushers and I have done fine. My record is probably about 500 against FOMO Crushers, right? Like I've won some and I've lost some. So I'm kind of surprised that a Darko Savagers list that had, it looked like there was 2 Slaughterborns in it. And then
I think just one Slaughterborn and one Slaughter Priest. That
Okay.
other big axe guy, it's tough to tell from far away because you're just looking at the picture right now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
From far away, it's tough to tell, but because it's just two intimidating guys with axes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the redder intimidating guy with an axe is a slaughter priest from Khorne. So two
Oh, okay. All
allies,
right, great. Yeah.
and they were running the God Speaker.
Yep.
I have generally, I'll eat a little bit of crow here. I Especially since I often take credit for the bespoke plus FOMO crusher like revolution. But I'll eat a little bit of crow here. I generally have warned people against God speakers. I still
Yeah.
think they're pretty bad, but it kind of makes sense with a slaughter priest because like you need those dice for the slaughter
Right.
priest, and
And the
you
FOMO needs the
probably
dice too.
yeah, running you usually want to have onslaught available. I agree with your FOMO
Yeah.
crushers. So yeah, having those God speakers around seems okay here. It seems not terrible. So that's pretty cool to find like a real use for it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and of
So
course, this. Oh yeah, go on.
no. I just thought it was very interesting because I mean, when have we ever talked about the Darko Savagers as being like top table anywhere? So
Yeah.
it to me it makes me wonder what like I didn't get to see what the other lists were at that event, and I'm kind of curious to see what they're playing. Like, did it have more of a narrative feel, or was it like a sweaty competitive feel, or
Mix of both. I mean,
yeah,
those big events always are a little bit less competitive than the mid-size events. I
sure,
feel like
yep,
the little ones are the least competitive, the biggest ones are after, and then the middle-sized ones are the most usually. But I will say something that really I thought really separated this Dark Oath list from every other Dark Oath list you see is usually people can't help themselves. They have to run Conan
mm-hmm.
in their Dark Oath warbands, and Conan's not very good. This person didn't run a single proven, so it was really just chaff and big hitters,
Yeah,
um, and the one ability combo. And I think there's a few bespokes that you can do this with where they have reasonable chaff, a leader who doesn't totally suck, and then you just like run big allies. And I think that is something that can work in a lot of situations
yeah,
for chaos. I think one box, two allies, cut everything extraneous out of the warband. That can work. I mean, Savagers is a little bit more special because like they actually have an ability you want to play with, whereas a lot of the warbands don't. But yeah, I think that can work for. I think other people can kind of make that work for them. I think you know the rest of the. I think the top standings had some pretty interesting lists in them. There was a Kellyan King in the new Cities of Sigmar that came in third. There was Hunters of Huanchi, Off Meta Musings doing really well. I think
mm-hmm.
he took third, and then the Kellyan King took fourth. This was also a pack with no objective missions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or maybe just one out of five. So it was like you didn't see a lot of people playing a ton of chaff, even though I
Yeah,
do think you can make chaff work in non-objective situations. But like, yeah, there were some pretty interesting concepts that weren't necessarily just the winner. I thought that was interesting, but I do think to be fair, um, in kind of like a pack that I think a lot of people didn't really know much about because they were running
mm-hmm.
like core book missions plus those awful unplayable White Dwarf missions. Like a lot of weird stuff can
Those
happen.
Talaxis ones,
Um, is that what they're called? I
the
think
new
no, they're the
Talaxis
ones.
missions.
No, they're the ones that came in a White Dwarf that were like bring the biggest guy you can, and they
Oh
were
yeah, right.
all just
Okay.
favoring the biggest guy
Yeah,
up. It was like
yeah,
whoever
yeah,
has the
yeah, yeah,
biggest guy on the field wins. And
yeah.
this person had enough blessings that they could give their FOMO Crusher either +1 move or +1 attack, depending on
Mm-hmm.
what they wanted to be doing with it. Um, So they were going to have the biggest fighter on the field in probably every game they played, except maybe when they played against the Akkelian King in the finals.
Right.
So I think that was like a big just thing to be doing, is I think the people who didn't have a real big chonker generally lost to, Akkelian King played against +1 attack Fomo Crusher in the finals, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense for what that pack was doing. But yeah, kind of cool stuff. I think there's a few tournament reports out there if people want to look.
Yeah.
I haven't checked them all out, and I think there's more forthcoming. But I think by the time this podcast goes out, I think they'll all be out. And I think a lot of people, War Games on Toast was there, Off Meta Musings was there. The winner was actually a French YouTuber who has a Skirmish Games YouTube channel in France. So you can kind of Google that. I wish I had their name on me, but unfortunately I don't. But you can see it out.
I'll look for it here in just a second. But I mean, keep talking.
So yeah, cool stuff. But there were a bunch of other tournaments too that we could kind of maybe just real quick talk about the winners from them.
Sorry, the winner was William Zantor, and his YouTube channel is WizGame TV.
There we go.
So check it out. He posted in the Warcry Facebook page about winning, which was awesome. So
there we go. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we had another event in New Jersey. So all of you that had to travel there, I apologize on behalf of the organizers because you had to go to New Jersey. Sorry about that. But apparently they had a good, decent turnout. I think they had 8 to 10 players, maybe 9, something like that. But it was 10, a decent, it was a decent turnout. They had some of our guys that came down at Nova and played. Most notably, Peter American Cabbage, who is just an absolute bully on the tables and has no mercy for anyone or their feelings. Peter, I hope you're listening to this. Peter Merson Cabbage. Yeah, he. So Peter, this was supposed to be kind of like don't bring your sweatiest list. We have some new players here, right?
And he didn't. In fairness, he didn't bring his sweatiest list.
It's true. He did not bring his sweatiest list. Instead, he brought a list that he's like, I'm going to try this out and see how it works. He had a kill a boss with boss hacking, and rusting flail, which is a decent fighter, especially as a leader. He had three Fellwater Tragus, and he had a Boggle-Eye, a Brugit, and Shank, and that rounded him out to 910 points. And then he put blessings on each of the Fellwater Tragus so that they were doing like extra damage, and they were just bullies out there on the table. I guess round
4,
1,
5, 3, 4 for 200 points each and 28 wounds, which is very reasonable as a profile. So that's pretty
and they've got some great abilities. They have the throw up ability, right? And then they also have the regenerative ability, which are all like good options. And I guess turn 1 he tabled his opponent.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, not turn
Just
1. Sorry, round 1. Round 1. He not turn 1. Round 1. Round 1 he tabled his opponent. And I don't know. I just when I was hearing this, all I could think of was Adam Sandler like in the kindergarten recess with the dodgeball. He gets there, he's like, now you are all in big trouble, and he's just like pummeling these poor new guys with like dodgeballs. So
I love it.
Well done. Like I said, Peter, I hope you're listening to this. No, we love Pete. We love Peter. Peter's a great friend of the show, obviously. And what I love about Peter is he's always trying out like new things. Like who thought about bringing 3 Fellwater Tragus? Like I've played against two times. I played against a Fellwater Tragus, and one of them was Peter, and he had brought 1 in his gits list. So trying 3 with the Killaboss. Like the Killaboss is no slouch out there either. So it's a very killy list. Very killy list. So
absolutely, it's pretty sweet. But the beat goes on. So we also
Yes.
had a tournament in Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
in Wausau, and a few of the Madison folks went over there. And there's like a pretty steady play group in Wausau, Wisconsin, where they don't necessarily overlap a ton with the like the obviously the Minnesota play group is pretty online because I'm very online with Warcry, and the Madison ones people hear about, but um, these guys aren't really on like the discords and stuff,
Hmm.
but they do get regular tournaments in. And a Madison player went over and brought a pretty sweaty list over there, and ended up winning their tournament. But pretty scary looking. It was a Varangard with Blade as the leader, then a
Oh my
Dark
gosh.
Oath. This says Dark Oath Yes Queen, um, and then a
Slay
FOMO
Queen,
Crusher. Yeah.
slay.
And then a FOMO Crusher, because
Uh,
obviously, of course, and then four
yeah.
Marauders, and then 40 points of blessings. So they could have either gone, depending on the matchup, he could have gone like +1 move on the Crusher, plus 15, having 15 points to do something with the Dark Oath Queen, or he could have gone 40 points for a Wild Dice, or he could have gone like +1 crit on the Dark Oath War Queen and +1 attack on the FOMO Crusher. Lots of different options that are pretty good that you can do with 40 points of blessings there. Um, we have seen this type of list win a few tournaments now, where it's
Mhm.
Dark Oath War Queen plus a FOMO Crusher, plus either a Myrmidon or a Varangard, depending on what you want to do there. But
It's hard
yeah.
to kill those things. That's the problem. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that. If that Dark Oath Queen gets to you first, you're a goner. I mean, she's a beast.
Yeah, and it feels like people have finally figured out a way to make her ability matter. Like
Uh-huh.
I think when 2.0 came out, I think a lot of people kind of looked at that model and were like, she kind of has some potential here. But people didn't really make it work at first, and now people are
Yeah.
kind of figuring out how to pair her with FOMO Crushers in a way that
Mhm.
actually works. Maybe it's blessings that have made it better. I don't know, but it seems like it's been doing really well lately.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if blessings, because like a lot of times blessings are kind of the Swiss Army knife where you can put it on something if you need it, and you can put it on something else if you need it. And so, like
Yeah.
where they really need her to step up, they can put that blessing on her. But if they don't need
Mhm.
it, then and she's fine just as is, then they can leave it there and give it to somebody else. So
Yeah.
maybe just having that flexibility has allowed her. Her stonks are rising. So
And then
yeah.
we had a local narrative tournament in the Twin Cities. So it was won by Iron Jaws. We all know Iron Jaws is pretty good, but we won't
Mhm.
put that list up because we had like items and stuff, and it's complicated. But there was a wild tournament in Poland. Are you able to put that up on the screen, Justin?
Is
That
this the white one that you sent me? No,
This
that's the
is
meta one.
the one that is the reason I am painting all of these Blood Reavers tonight
Oh yeah, hold
that
on.
I've had for over a year. I grabbed 20 Blood Reavers, I think like 2 years ago, and never painted them. And now I'm finally painting them because I'm going to try out this warband at some point
I think
soon.
it's wild. And like everybody's been talking about how to make these guys work, right?
Right, because
Oh, hold on.
Corn are doing terrible in the
Yeah,
meta.
poor guys. Poor guys.
Um, and yeah,
Oh, here we go.
finally we fixed it. We Blood Reaver Chieftain.
Dude, it's so bad. There's 14 fighters in this list. It's out of control. Out of control. So it's 1,000 points, 14 fighters. There's the Blood Reaver Chieftain, right? 120 points. He's a hero. You have a Blood Warrior with Gorax and Gorefist at 100 points. And then you have literally 12 Blood Reavers with Reaver Blades after that. It's
Yep.
This is literally the book of like the introduction of AOS. Did you ever read that book? It was
No.
It was like the story of like how the Stormcast kind of saved these people. And it was like this horde of Blood Reavers that were just like coming to cannibalize this town, and the Stormcast came down and saved them. But like, this is the story right here. Like, this is them, the chieftain with 12 Blood Reavers, like just coming in to maraud things, and yeah.
And
Pretty wild.
apparently they only played one objective mission in that tournament. And this person was just able to win non-objective missions by just surrounding their opponents and just flooding them with Blood Reaver damage, which is pretty sweet.
This is like the worst gang initiation ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like completely surrounded, and everybody's just like whack, 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 whack.
Yeah. Might take 7 of them to kill you, but guess what? They've got them. They've got the models.
Got the numbers. Yeah, exactly. A2 Brutus, A2,
Mhm.
So
yeah. So this is pretty sweet, and I am going to try that list out. I think I'm going to play them against, because I also have everything except for the Slaughter Priest for the Warhammer World list that won. So I'm going to try to play this against them for a battle report on the channel once I get these Blood Reavers painted. So I'm very excited.
I like it. I like it a lot. I can't wait to hear this. Like, it would be so hilarious if all of a sudden it's just like Blood Reaver spam became like part of the meta. It's like if you wanted to win, you had to learn how to deal with Blood Reaver spam.
Yeah, I'm going to a tournament pretty soon. I don't think I'm taking Blood Reaver spam, but I should take Blood Reaver spam.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody to, sending out your reports of your events. Like, it's always good to hear about what's going on in other places and like what you guys are up to. I know, like, I wish I could be running more events more often. And so it's really nice to see that, people who have even recently got into the game not too long ago, but they've like had experience running like Age of Sigmar tournaments or 40K or Kill Team. It's like, oh yeah, no problem. We'll run a Warcry tournament and or event or whatever you want to play. So look, if you are like, hey, I want to know how to run an event, but I don't know where to start, our Discord is a great place to ask questions because we have a lot of people that have run events in there. And everybody's super friendly and can give you advice on how to like start one up. We even have tournament packets that we could send your way to get you started, and let you know like what you need in terms of like day one, what you need for the tables, all that kind of thing. So we can help you take the intimidation factor out of like running a tournament or event or whatever you want to do, and just start playing more Warcry. So I think that would be great. Dan, thank you for coming on the show. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing about your Dispossessed dwarves. I am super excited about maybe getting some dwarves myself and putting them on the table because they sound like they're a lot of fun. And I think, in my opinion, we didn't really get into our meta discussion, but I think that the Dispossessed are an anti-meta list. Right, ones that can counter the kind of the big lists out there and surprise people because not a lot of people are playing them. So I like that. I like that a lot. So thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us about that. And everybody else, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate your time. And we hope that you all have a great night, and we will see you at the tables. Night, everybody.